Okay. All right. I think that should do it. Okay. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. To stage or not to stage? That is the question. My name is Joshua Schlag, Digital Marketing Manager here at Pyramid Analytics. I'll be the host and moderator for today's session. Before we get started, I'd just like to set some quick expectations. We are scheduled for about 50 minutes. For this webinar, we do highly encourage you to chime in with questions through the Q&A console at any time. We do have time set aside to go through any submitted questions at the end, and so we'll plan to handle them at that point. In case you need to drop off for any reason, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out a link to the replay later today or tomorrow. All that said, I'm going to not spin my wheels too much and rather just pass things along. So we have with us today Principal Technologist at Pyramid Analytics, Ian McDonald. And joining Ian today, we're happy to welcome Carson Weidman from Exasol. I'll allow them to introduce themselves perhaps a bit more as they get going on the topic at hand. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Josh, and welcome everybody. This is Ian McDonald, Principal Technologist at Pyramid. I've been working with Pyramid now for around about 8 years, and prior to that, around 25 years working in the analytics space for a variety of software vendors and also for a number of systems integrators and specialist consulting houses designing, implementing, and delivering large-scale analytics solutions for customers around the world. My role at Pyramid is one of an evangelical nature. So you've probably, if you look at any of our webinars on the Pyramid website, then you'll probably come across me and hear my dulcet tones on a number of sessions. We're going to be looking at a number of key areas today in terms of how Pyramid integrates tightly with Exasol, one of the world's leading enterprise in-memory analytic engines. So before we dive in, I'd just like to invite Carson to introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. As said, my name is Carson Weidman. I'm working as Technical Alliance Manager here at Exasol. Initially joined Exasol back in 2007, so I have a little legacy with the company. Initially heading the pre-sales team, and now basically working on the partner side together with our partners, be it the technology ones like Pyramid Analytics, but also our consulting partners, to how to best leverage our technology at customers in their environments. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump into it. So why Exasol and why Pyramid and why are we here and what are we exactly? So Exasol is an analytics database. It's a relational database management system that has several attributes that were implemented back 20 years ago already. So it has a little history, this product. Being an in-memory column store database running on a cluster of servers to achieve best possible performance. As we all know in analytics, what really counts is the performance. When you have a flow of thoughts that you want to look for, that you want to solve problems, you want to find the right answers to your questions in your data, you need something that answers those questions as quickly as possible. Exasol, as the database, supports multiple platforms. We initially came from the on-premises world, but we are also available in the cloud, the public ones like AWS, Azure, or Google, but also on private clouds, and also in any form of hybrid scenarios that are enabled by our virtualization capabilities, for example, and the powerful data integration capabilities as well. As we all know, you only can analyze data that is in the database, so we somehow have to make sure that we also can get that data in very quickly to make it available. We unite the traditional relational model SQL world with the new modern data science world. That is, we provide capabilities not only to write standard SQL code, but we also provide capabilities to actually write data science code inside the database and execute that then there in this massive parallel way in order, again, to get those worlds together and to enable teams from both worlds to actually work on the same data and get insights into that. And last but not least, of course, we're an enterprise product. We are an infrastructure product. We're sitting at the heart of the company. That means we have to make sure that our security model is enterprise grade, that we have the necessary management functionalities. We have been deployed in banks, dual data center setups, etc. That's all we know. But probably the most important thing to us from the beginning has been that we want to implement a technology that is practically tuning free. we wanted to make sure that people can actually focus on their data, on the data model, and on the data and on their analysis. And the database takes care of the rest. No need for tuning, no need for creating indexes or stuff like that. That's something that the database does, and you just can keep focusing on your actual work, on the actual value add that you can generate for your company by using the database.
Thank you, Carsten, and I'm sure that's going to make a lot of DBAs very happy. But in the meantime, on the Pyramid side, what does Pyramid consist of? Well, effectively, it's a full self-service analytic platform. Pyramid provides tools and what we call apps to provide everything from accessing raw data from multiple locations, to be able to blend that data together, prepare the data, to be able to write that data model to a number of target systems. And of course, Exasol being one of those, and we'll see some more of that a little bit later. Pyramid is able to scale out using a robust clustering architecture. We will also be delivering later this year a full Kubernetes version of Pyramid, which will provide that kind of elastic resource, which will automatically scale up and scale down, just as important, depending upon usage. So keep an eye out for announcements around that. Again, Pyramid supports multiple platforms in flexible configurations across Windows and Linux environments. And again, that can be installed on-prem, multiple clouds, or hybrid offerings. On the analytics side, one of the key interesting features of Pyramid is its ability to provide the full spectrum of analytic functionality that you'd require from a visual analytics environment, but based upon standard SQL query engine. So working closely with Exasol, it allows us, in fact, allows ordinary users to do sophisticated calculations, machine learning algorithms, execution of those, all based within and upon a SQL database. In this case, we're talking about Exasol. Again, we designed the product from the outset to be enterprise grade in terms of security, management features, scalability, and robustness. And Pyramid comes built in as a multi-tenant type platform. So I can set up multiple clients, each are walled, if you like, within their own environment, with their own data and their own content. Full centralized access controls and auditing allows you to keep a close look at what your users are doing, what your clients may be doing, and to be able to see what content is being used, when, where, and why, and even drill right down in terms of the individual queries that Pyramid is generating into the underlying data. So I'm sure you can see, looking at this slide, Exasol and Pyramid have very, very complementary capabilities. We've designed at the outset for that enterprise-grade deployment with full flexibility in terms of the data you want to work with, the analytics you'd like to produce.
Right, and that leads basically to the shared value proposition that we offer. And from an Exasol perspective, first of all, it's the unrivaled performance. According to independent benchmarks, we have proven that we are the fastest analytical database in the world, which just allows you to analyze anything that you have in your company as data as quickly as possible. With these self-tuning features that we provide and basically a very resource-efficient database or software that we have developed, it also allows companies to significantly reduce their TCO. And very important also, when we look at, for example, cloud or hybrid setups, we have also, or we can also make these costs completely predictable. That means there's no hidden cost, or all of a sudden, due to some scaling happening, unpredictable costs that occur. That is not the case with Exasol. When we look at the AI part and the BI part, we call it the unification of those two worlds, because you can actually run predictions in the database, and we have customers doing that train a model, deploy the model to the database, and then use that in their database, in their daily business, to actually run live predictions on their data and use that in their decision processes, in their decision making, in finding insights into the data and moving further along there and getting more deeper into the data, get to know more details about it, find oddities, etc., that then provide better results, and therefore then also lead to better decisions, basically in the end making them more successful. And we're just a software. That means we have no platform or vendor or architecture login. We provide one aspect in this overall software stack, and together with Pyramid, we can be a very powerful combination that then really allows you to do anything with your data, get these insights fast and at the best possible level.
And certainly building up on that, one of the things that Pyramid brings to the relationship is the ability to bring all of this really cool database technology to business users without them having to worry about the detailed technical aspects of database design, build, and execution. So Pyramid leverages Exasol's in-memory power using a direct query engine. And internally, we nickname that something called Piranha, and it utilizes what we call in-place analytics from Pyramid. So this, unlike many of the analytic tools you'll see on the market today, requires you not to extract data from the central database and load it into your desktop tool. Most of the, in quotes, popular analytic tools in the market, those which get a lot of airplay and a lot of coverage, effectively all have their own proprietary in-memory engines. And to take advantage of their analytic capability, you must ingest the data into those proprietary engines, often sitting on the desktop. Of course, what this leads to is data silos on desktops, a lack of governance and control of the data and content, difficult to share and reuse content across your enterprise. With Pyramid working with Exasol, we work directly against the Exasol engine. We already have built effectively an in-memory database resource and repository with Exasol. To have to extract the data and load it into another engine on your desktop in a proprietary structure just seems crazy. So Pyramid is able to, via its direct query Piranha engine, perform this analytics in place via a drag and drop approach, as you'd expect for ordinary business users. Pyramid itself is server-based and accessed entirely through a browser, both for content interaction and consumption and for authoring as well. Therefore, with a zero footprint on desktop, it means that the administration and management is easy, quick, and simple, and can easily support thousands of users across your organization anywhere in the world, pretty much from any device. Pyramid closely leverages Exasol's AI, machine learning deployment, and visualization, and it also supplies additional capabilities for users and citizen data scientists to build their own R and Python scripts for execution within the Pyramid platform and also via Exasol's UDFs. Again, because we're using effectively a standard SQL engine for our analytics, again, the models that you build in Pyramid gives you no specific lock-in. A model built in Pyramid and written to Exasol can be consumed by other tools that may want to connect to that database. So again, very complementary in terms of what we offer. And you can see, I think, quite clearly from this why Exasol and Pyramid are working closely together to bring you the analytic solutions that you want.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to this, we mentioned I've mentioned the capabilities in SQL, but also the capabilities in AI and ML. And I want to just dig a little bit deeper into that part of what Exasol can do. It's actually, we call it a UDF framework, user-defined function. That means you can write code as a SQL function inside the database using your favorite language that you typically use in your data science scenarios. Typically, that would be probably something like Python or R, which is something we ship automatically with the database. Java also is supported. But we designed it also as an open framework. That means you can add your language of choice to the mix and use that language inside the database. So for example, if you prefer doing stuff in Scala, there's no problem. You can add Scala to the mix. We have customers that have created their own Go containers or C++ containers to work with these languages inside the database. And leverage the capabilities of the database in terms of the scalability, the parallelization of the whole thing without you as a developer having to think about that. These algorithms automatically are executed in parallel inside the database and thus provide a much higher performance than they would if you had deployed them in an external box and run them there. Of course, when doing data science in a database, usually in the BI space, you work with a tool like Pyramid Analytics or other visualizations tools. But in the data science area, you, of course, have a different tool set usually that you're used to work with. They are also fully supported. So be it RStudio or PyCharm or Jupyter Notebooks, something that many data scientists, as I learned, love to use. These are fully supported, so you can also use these to create the proper algorithms, to train the models, to create the functions and deploy them in the database and then use them there in combination together with Pyramid Analytics to then get the most out of your data that is stored in there.
So let's dig down a little bit further in terms of Pyramid itself and what's in the box. Well, Pyramid, as you look at it from a three-tier point of view. So first of all is your data. And Pyramid effectively always operates in what we call direct query mode. So this allows you to query or produce and conduct analytics in place, effectively regardless of the underlying data storage engine. This includes, of course, all the standard SQL type databases, enterprise in-memory engines such as Exasol. It also applies to multidimensional analytic engines. And for that, I mean, refer to things like SQL Server Analysis Services or SAP BW. Interestingly, what Pyramid is able to do is to abstract the analytic functionality from the underlying storage engine. So from a user point of view, if I'm working, for example, with a multidimensional engine like SAP BW or Analysis Services, and then I want to swap perhaps from that slightly legacy technology to a modern in-memory engine like Exasol, the user functionality, the user interface, the user experience, the analytics that they can perform remain largely unchanged. So this allows me then to deliver an analytic solution regardless of the underlying data store and to be able to migrate and move from the legacy technologies to the more modern environment. The Pyramid server itself, as we mentioned earlier, can be deployed on-prem or in cloud or hybrid structures, and is able to scale up in terms of your CPU and RAM or out across multiple virtual or physical machines. As mentioned earlier, watch out for the Kubernetes announcement a little bit later this year. On the front end, from a user point of view, I can connect to Pyramid as either what we call a viewer or as a professional level user. A viewer can consume and interact and browse content within the Pyramid repository, but effectively cannot create new content from scratch. A professional level viewer can have potentially access to all of the Pyramid functionality. However, what you see with Pyramid is a very wide, broad, and deep analytic platform. And so I can actually customize individual user or team's experience of Pyramid by giving them graded access to the functionality on offer. So I may have relatively novice data users that can create simple analyses and queries and drag and drop them to create simple dashboards. I may have data scientists that want to create new analytic models to build out and reuse the Python and R scripts that Carsten was talking about. And again, I can share those and store those within the Pyramid repository for access by multiple users. When I get to my full extent in terms of sort of central BI team, for example, or strong power users, then they can use all of these apps to actually deliver their solution. The apps themselves include a data modeling tool to create the analytic models required to access my data, to create blended data sets and extract and move and blend and write the data to, for example, Exasol. The Discover module allows me to drag and drop to create my queries and visualizations, each of those saved into a central repository. In that repository, I have my own private workspace and shared team workspaces and shared public workspaces, depending upon what's been set up by the administrator. My Formulate module allows me to create reusable business calculations. That could be a calculation across numeric items, it could be categorical items, it could be a mixture of the two, it could even be of dynamic sets, fully defined KPIs, etc. My Present module allows me to build interactive dashboards. We'll see a little bit of this a bit later. And my Publish module to, again, reuse my Discover views to build pixel-perfect reports with full scheduling and intelligent distribution for both internal and external stakeholders, outputting in PDF and a variety of Office and Internet formats. My Illustrate module allows me to build dynamic infographics and also to actually create dynamic text generated from the data, again, for inclusion in my dashboards and publications. There's obviously a full set of administrative tools to manage my content, my data access, servers, the users, and so on and so forth. And again, for more detail of this, then please have a look at one of our monthly Introduction to Pyramid webinars where we go into a lot more detail. So we talked a little bit about in-place analytics and modeling scenarios with Exasol. So what do we actually mean by this? Well, as we mentioned earlier, Pyramid conducts its queries in direct mode, working directly with the underlying data storage engine. So we have effectively, let's say I have an existing Exasol database and I'd want to start analyzing that data. What I need to do is to select the database, select the tables that I want to work with. Pyramid will then automatically generate a model definition, looking at the tables and relationships, the measures that I want, how those need to be aggregated. I can enhance that model by defining things like hierarchies and drill paths, etc. as well, how I want the measure items to be aggregated and what types, minimum, maximum, average, and so on. Once that model has been created, that then effectively drives the remaining Pyramid UI in terms of the user, and also is used to drive the Piranha query engine, which will dynamically generate the SQL queries required to satisfy the user's query request. The second option here, which is around what we would call a new model where I want to combine multiple data stores. So again, most of the desktop analytic tools you see today on the market allow you to do this kind of data mashup, but then invariably you'll need to keep the results of that mashup within their own proprietary engines. In Pyramid, I can choose where I want to write that data mashup. In this case, obviously, we're writing it back into Exasol. Alongside that, Pyramid will generate the model definition for that data in Exasol. And again, I can start consuming that and interacting with it as I see fit. The final scenario is where, again, I may have a blended data set, or it may just be a single data source, doesn't really matter. But I want to do some type of transformation and data preparation on that before I save that particular analytic model. Again, Pyramid also provides the ability to take your existing Python and R scripts and use those as machine learning algorithms against that data and capture the output of that. We can also invoke some of the Exasol functions as well directly as part of that process. Again, the writing of that blended data set, capturing the output of those algorithms and whatever other transformation I take, I can write the resulting analytic model into Exasol. And again, with that model generation, use that then to drive the query engine for further analyses. So we see in this case that we have effectively using Exasol as a centralized analytic data lake repository. Unlike desktop analytic tools where all of that happens on the desktop and I end up with multiple silos and different versions of the data, I lack governance, control, security, and management. By writing the models back to my central repository, I gain the power, speed, and capability of Exasol as an in-memory analytic engine. And also, of course, it's all in one place, in one format to aid the governance, security, and the reuse, perhaps, using other tools. I may want to connect Excel to it, for example, and that's perfectly happy. So a lot of different styles. We'll see a couple of these in terms of the demonstration, and also some other aspects as well. So I hope you can see that, from this point of view, Exasol and Pyramid are better working together. Pyramid interoperates natively with Exasol to give you the kind of analytic sophistication with the outstanding performance given to us from the data management side by Exasol database. One of the interesting ways that we may want to combine information as well as sort of modeling it centrally and blending data sets together is that I may need to do this kind of rolling migration to Exasol, if you like. So I may already have a number of existing data sources. I want to actually access those immediately and provide analyses on them, but over time, move those disparate data sources into a central repository. With Pyramid, as well as creating blended data models where I store my data in Exasol, I can also create what we call model mapping at the front end. So I can create a dashboard which has some content coming from Exasol, some content perhaps coming from some other legacy database initially, and I can do cross-filtering, cross-management actually in the front end rather than modeling in the back end. So from this point of view, it allows me to sort of create that rolling migration from legacy to a modern platform without necessarily seeing any interruption in service from a user point of view. I'm not going to tuck into the licensing at the moment, other than, as mentioned already, we have viewer versus professional. If you want more interest and detail around that, then please contact us. But I would say it is highly competitive from a pricing point of view compared to many existing analytic tools, and you get a whole lot more in the box to boot.
Nothing much to add from my side on this. I would say it's just the combination where we can truly then, using Pyramid Analytics, truly demonstrate our performance that we can provide. And you'll see that later in the demo that we're running, that this is just a great fit and makes just data analysis so much joy.
Exactly. And indeed, when we look to external commentators and observers of the market, in this case, Dresner Advisory Services, Howard Dresner, ex-Gartner, who actually is the guy that coined the term business intelligence back in the early 1990s. In terms of their assessment of the two product areas in their respective markets, we can see we occupy a very similar position as a leader in that sort of overall experience quadrant here. So again, very complementary in terms of our market positioning by third-party observers. And all of this led to us, of course, hooking up and becoming close partners in terms of delivering outstanding analytic solutions to our customers. So we talked a little bit earlier about that sort of rolling migrations. This is really just a bit of a graphical view of here. Of course, I can connect directly to Exasol and do my in-place analytics, working directly with my Exasol database. We'll see an example of that in the demo. We can also do this, what we call linked model reporting, cross-model filtering, cross-analytic views filtering, cross-filtering across my analytic items on my dashboard. So it might be that I may have some legacy structures in place already. And what I want to be able to do is to combine those in one dashboard. And then over time, perhaps as I migrate my legacy database to my Exasol in-memory analytic repository, that I can, from a user point of view, except for perhaps a superior performance, functionally, I'll see no difference. So it allows you time and space to migrate from legacy to modern platform without impacting the user significantly. And of course, at the end of the day, we get to the integrated model, whereby I'm bringing data from multiple sources together, enriching that data, and then generating and building an analytic model stored in Exasol for further analytics. So from that point of view, let's drop down and have a look at this stuff in action. It's great hearing us talk about it, but I'm sure people are more interested in actually seeing this stuff actually working. So I'm going to skip over. Now, I'm actually going to play two roles today. The first of which is that I've actually got Pyramid running here. I've connected to it using Firefox in this case. Pretty much any HTML5 browser will do very nicely. We use Chrome though as our reference browser. Obviously that's the one where we guarantee stuff to work. Most of the others will work pretty well. But again, if you hit any glitches, let us know and we can fix those. So in this case, I've connected as a professional level user and slightly outside of what we've talked about so far, but I want to take initially my role as just a general analytic data user, power user in the business. And I want to do some analysis of a data set. And again, typically with my desktop tools, this is where I would take my Excel file, I'd import it into my desktop tool, build a local analytic model, create my analyses, and then of course, in order to share that, of course, I then have to copy that enormous file around the place, or maybe export it from my laptop, move it to the server, import it into the server environment, and set all that up with all of my security, etc. In Pyramid, it's a single integrated environment. Everything is already running on the server. And for this user, I've dictated that Exasol is the default analytic engine that Pyramid is going to use. So this particular user has an interesting data set. What they want to do is to work with a set which actually contains all of the hurricane observations in the North Atlantic from 2000 through to 2012, I think it is. Yeah, around about 7,000 rows. It's not a huge data set, but just do for illustration purposes. You can see there's a lot of observations of wind speed, latitude, longitude of the observation, timestamps of those, wind speed, pressures, and so on. So I want to build a model with this in Pyramid, and I'm going to be using Exasol as the underlying analytic engine once my model has been built. So to do that, I need, from a Pyramid point of view, to select I want to build a new model. And then all I need to do from a user point of view is simply grab my hurricanes file and drop it into the Pyramid environment. You'll see here that now Pyramid has uploaded that data to the server. And it's asking me whether I want to, where I want to build it. And in fact, it says select the server for saving the model. Now, in this case, I've turned everything else off for this user. So I might have decided from this organization that Exasol is my analytic model repository. And that's what we're going to use. And that's the same for everybody. Of course, this means that my analytic model is stored on a centralized server. I get all of the performance and everything I do from that, plus, of course, all of the governance and management, standard backups, and so on and so forth. Once the model's built, okay, did you lose my link?
Yep. Looks like we lost you there.
Okay, not for long, hope. Where did I drop off?
You just said once the model is built. So yeah, right here on the screen.
Fine.
Yep.
All right, super. Okay.
Perfect.
So you haven't missed anything. That's great. So let's build. And all you need to do is simply choose the build option. So let's just give that a name, actually. Let's call that Hurricanes, Exasol and Pyramid webinar. And I'm going to choose build. So what Pyramid is doing now is basically pulling that data out of Excel. It has a look at it to see what types the data is, and then writes that data into the Exasol engine. So you can see now it's already built something here. We already got that set up. And Pyramid comes with a whole bunch of options in here in terms of creating my analyses. So in this particular case, what I may want to do here is to look at my name, for example, and I can just drop that into my grid. I may want to look at my wind speed here. And Pyramid is creating an aggregate model in here, but what I might want to show rather than that one is to actually show that, for example, as a maximum value. So actually show the maximum wind speed in here, and then I may want to see this, obviously, let's just a quick sort on this one. Let's not do the sort that way. Let's do it this way. I want to actually do a quick sort on that descending. So now I can see the maximum wind speed. I may want to then visualize that as my chart. I just do a quick pivot to get that view set. So now you can see here my wind speeds, maximum wind speeds sorted for that by that option. I can then save this content into my repository. You can see I have my own individual workspace. I have shared workspaces. I have public workspaces. So in this case, I'm just going to call that one, let's call it chart, for example. Creating a new view on here, then I may want to take my latitude and my longitude, for example. Now, pyramids actually recognize these as a geospatial type. And by default, it will create an averaging model rather than an aggregate model. It makes no sense to add up latitude and longitudes. So you can see effectively what I'm looking at here is the average observations, or the average location of all of my observations. On my map types, we can change this around to look, for example, as a street map, bring a bit of color into it. I can set the opacity up and drop the size down. So now this is my individual or the location of my average or my observations. I may want to bring each of the names across, and we'll drop that into my color drop zone. We now see the average locations for each of my hurricanes. Alternatively, I could drop that into my filters, for example, maybe have that as a set of buttons down the right-hand side. And again, as I look through here, if I go and choose Bill, for example, or Bonnie, we can see where they're located. But there's an awful lot of buttons I got down here for all of my hurricanes here. And often I want to look at this perhaps by year. So I can use year to filter my names in my box here. So again, choose, for example, 2005, filters out those list of buttons. I can then choose, for example, Hurricane Katrina. Everybody knows that one. So there's the average location off the west coast of Florida. But I'm also interested in what kind of track it took. I want to take the individual observations, and we'll show those into my details. We can now see that track. And in terms of some of adding information to here, I may want to add wind speed, for example, to its color. Let's add pressure to size. And in fact, what I'd like to do is just to swap that around so that my low wind speeds are green and my high wind speeds are red, like so. Again, we created my track here. It's interesting. Again, I can save that. And let's just call that one map. And then I can start to bring these together. In Pyramid, we separate out my analytic view strongly from the dashboarding, and some of the desktop products, there's kind of a blur between the two of those. But here we keep them separate so that it's easy to reuse individual visualizations across multiple dashboards. So in this case, I want to create a new dashboard. I can choose a theme, to choose a size to deliver and create. And then I can take, for example, my chart, I can just drop it onto my dashboard and set it up the size I want. The map, again, I could take from my tab, but I can also access the individual items in that particular query. So I may want to just take the map itself without any of the legend, etc. And we'll just position that up the way I want it. I may want to take wind speed and, for example, just overlay that on top of the map so we can see it clearly here. But I also want to take the year filter that we had set up here, and also the name filter that was set up in my query. And we'll drop those into my dashboards. My name one was actually all set up as a button, but I actually want to revert that back just to be a drop down to save screen real estate. You'll see Pyramid's already connected these analytic items together. And in fact, that's what I'm with my auto interact button is turned on. In this particular case, actually, I don't want the name item to filter the chart. I want to see this chart for each of my years as I select them. But I do want to have my year filter the list in my name filter. So I simply draw the interaction across. When I execute my dashboard, we can now see that running. As I choose a different year, we see my wind speed change there in terms of one with the highest wind speed. And again, I can choose now my different item here to actually show that track of that particular hurricane. So very quickly and easily building interactive dashboard. Again, all of this is working in direct query mode directly into the Exasol database as it was created from when I dragged and dropped my Excel sheet in. Once I've actually created then my dashboard, I can save that. And of course, because we're working with a central repository, I can save it to my webinar content, for example. And this is a shared workspace for all members of that particular role. So again, let's just call that one dashboard and save it. That's immediately now available to anybody that wants to use it. Okay, so that's a kind of a self-service analytics point of view. Let's go back a stage, back to that kind of role. I'm going to go back in now as an administrator. I'm still connected to the same server, but I now have this nice administrator cogwheel here on my left-hand panel. So the first of those is looking at that model mapping. So I already prepared a couple of items in here. If I look at my forecast, for example, I've created a view. Again, we're working with my Exasol server. I've created a model called standard sales on that server. And you can see in this case, I've got a number of years worth of data. I've selected to show the months from each of the year, which I can filter from the drop down here, and also filter the countries. Pyramid includes a whole bunch of advanced statistical analyses and other capabilities, one of which is to forecast with multiple options, as well as the ability to use Python and R to construct bespoke and custom forecasting algorithms as you require. So in this case, I've created a forecast. I've also applied the forecasting algorithm to the historic data on a yearly basis. So in this case, you can see the red line is my actual sales. The blue line is the forecast sales applied to the historical data to see how close a fit it is to the actual values. And then my forecast 6 months out is the blue dotted line. And then the shaded area is my 90% confidence interval on that forecast. On the other side, if we look back in my item here, I've also created a grid. Now my grid, you'll notice, is working against a different database. In this case, I'm looking at my sales quantity, margin, etc., with a subtotal across my product categories and my promotion categories. And again, lots of options in terms of formatting my grid. Again, here we've got nice pink for my subtotals, for example. Maybe I also actually want to make those bold, for example. So again, Pyramid provides you lots and lots of formatting options, even just for standard grid type data. So you'll notice this is actually coming from a model which is stored in my local Postgres database. So maybe that's being used as for some legacy application. I've got data still in there as well as data in my Exasol database. So what I need to do is I could try and join this data together as a modeling exercise, but actually I don't have time for that right now. I need to be able to bring this data together without going through that exercise. So to do that, if we go back to my Content Explorer, I've created a little dashboard. And my dashboard in this case has those two items. You saw me how to create the dashboards earlier, just drag and drop them onto the canvas. And we can see in this case now that I've got my grid, which is being sourced direct query into Postgres, and my forecast, which is coming from my Exasol model. And I'm filtering by country. If I choose a different country, Canada, you'll see the data in the grid change, as does my forecast data. If you go to the United States, you'll see that change again. Even if I look at clothing, for example, again, we see that being cross-filtering. So the data is coming from two entirely separate models, entirely separate databases, but it allows me to create an integrated solution where I'm cross-filtering at the front end rather than integrating data at the back end. So this allows me this kind of progression of saying, okay, I've got legacy data sources, I've got my modern Exasol database, which I'm building up over time, but I want to be able to combine them immediately without going through that sort of more lengthy modeling process. How does this actually work? Well, let's just drop out of here, and we'll actually go and open that in edit mode. And in my model, you can see again, I just dragged my content onto here. And then we have this something called model mapping. And this will allow me to map effectively the attributes or hierarchies from one model to another. So in this case, my first model is my sales and store online. And this is coming from my Exasol model. And the second one, I'm actually looking at this from my Pyramid Lite demo, which is coming from my Postgres database. And then I choose which of the attributes and dimensional attributes I want to map one to the other. So in this case, I'm mapping country from my Exasol model to country in my Postgres model, or vice versa, using the unique name as the matching type. There's more advanced options I can do if your model descriptions are more complicated. Then I have full programmatic capability to match the model definitions from one to the other. But in this case, I've got common data items like country, and typically in lots of models that would be time, like years and months, etc. But to be able to do this cross-model mapping means that at runtime, I can take the values in this case from my Exasol model of United States and then pass that across as a filter, not just to the Exasol content, but to the legacy content as well. So that's model mapping at the front end. If you like that, if you remember the slide where I had multiple visualizations coming from multiple sources. But of course, at the end of the day, what I'd like to do is use my Exasol central repository where I'm collecting and centralizing and integrating the data into single models. So to do that, I want to create a new model. I'm going to go to here, Model Pro, and I'm going to choose, in this case, to connect to my legacy Postgres database. I'm going to use that Pyramid Lite demo again, that database here. And then I can select the data tables that I want to work with. In this case, I'm going to choose all of them. Now, I may want to do some additional transformations on my data. So in this case, you can see I've got customers here. I've got customer first name and last name. And what I like to do in this case is to combine those together into a full name. So I want to take my first name and my last name. I'm going to separate that with a space, and I'm going to call that one field full name. On my sales items in here, on my data, my sales transactions, you can see that I've got a date timestamp. We can show a distribution of that data for the first 50 records, or let's look at for the first 500, for example. It's also asking me do I suggest I want to apply time intelligence. If I do that, what this pyramid block will do is to materialize all of my time attributes from the date key field in terms of months, weeks, quarters, years, etc. that I want to do my analysis by. We talked a little bit in the presentation about the respective use of Python and R in Exasol and Pyramid. And again, they can be cross-used across the two products. As an example of that, if we look at, again, my data here, as a product manager, I might want to try and understand how my product sales, how the products cluster based upon their revenue and margin that they generate. So you'll see there's a set of machine learning algorithms available to you out of the box, as well as the ability to create your own custom Python and R scripts. And again, these could be the same ones you're using in Exasol. So in this case, I'm using one of these pre-built blocks to actually do some numeric clustering. I want this based upon my sales and my margin. Again, I can save the output of this model. I can do model training and orchestrate these flows to do that. We'll leave that for the moment. And again, the other thing, if you look at my data, I have this thing called promotion key. Now, in my fictitious company, my sales are run through different marketing agencies, through different promotions. I'd like to see how each agency performs from a revenue and margin point of view. Unfortunately, that information is not in my database. It's sitting in a spreadsheet in marketing. So I want to take Excel. I want to upload a data file from here. And in this case, if I look for my demo resources, I got a file called just agencies. If I upload that and add that Excel table in, we can see that we've actually got in here my promotion key and my name. Okay, seem to have rather jumped the gun a bit there. Just wait a second for that to for it to come back. If not, I will just save that one. Let's just give that a name. Let's call that one Webby. And we're just going to do a quick refresh of my screen here. Okay, sorry about that one. Just got a bit carried away with myself. Let's just go back to my Webby. Okay, and on that one, there's my data set. There it is. Okay, so there's my two data flows. Obviously, I need to blend this data together now and obviously capture the output of my clustering algorithm. So I need to choose a target. And again, in this case, of course, we're going to take my Exasol database as the target. I want to connect all the dots, and I want to set up a new one. Let's call this one Webinar Blend. And if I can see spell properly, blend. And you'll notice also things like I'm able to create some incremental data loads as well as refreshing the entire model. So again, I can build over time that sort of time-oriented data warehouse structure. The data model, of course, in here will be the ability to define my table relationships. So there you can see them sitting there. In fact, on this particular one, I think that joins, let's switch the direction of that one. But you can see full capability in terms of my inner join capability. Once that's been defined, again, I can go to additional lengths and say, well, for my margin, for example, I want that to be an averaging model rather than an aggregate one, and I want that displayed as percentage. I can also define my own hierarchies in here. So what's interesting with Pyramid, even though I'm working with a SQL-based database like Exasol, I can create hierarchies that behave just like you would if you're working with a dimensional database connecting to it with Excel, for example. Let's add that in. Again, I can set the security. I can share this with different roles and different users, again, directly because it's all running on the server. Let's just process that. And we'll see starting up, there's my data flow one. We're reading data from Postgres. We're reading data from Excel. We're applying my k-means formulation. And now it's written the data to Exasol. You can see it's looking to Exasol here. And so I can do things like, for example, take my product, drop it into my scatter plot. Let's plot my sales versus margin, for example. And of course, in the output, there's my k-means cluster. I can use that to set my color. Of course, I could use that instantly to look at that as a filter. So I can look at my different clusters, and maybe on this one, let's apply a linear regression to that. The final piece of the jigsaw is where I want to connect to an Exasol database that's already in place. So again, I want to create a new discovery. In this case, I want to browse my servers, choose my Exasol one. You can see some of the ones I've already built here, my Webby Blend and the Hurricane ones I just built. But I want to go and look at existing databases. I think there's one in here called Regional Sales. You can see again, it will set up, I can choose the tables that I want to work with here. Let's just take those three, for example. I can also write custom queries if I wish. Again, add that model in. It will then heuristically determine the relationships, again, full join capability, multiple fields, etc. And again, working in this interface, I can choose, for example, here then my, I'll find it, margin, net margin, for example. And again, I want to set that to be an averaging measure with a particular format of percentages. Once I finish that, this is then actually going to then build a virtual model. So I've not moved any data. I just created a model in that first model scenario. And here now I can just start to query that data. So I drag my country into my geospatial mapping, for example, and then color code those based on the value of sales. So that's it from a demo point of view. We're just about out of time. So from that point of view, let's just go to the next slide. I think that's pretty much it. Josh, Carson, and myself will be more than happy to take any questions, should there be any.
Yeah, we've got, I guess, kind of a salesy question. Speaking as someone who is new to Pyramid and doesn't yet have an instance of Exasol either, what would you recommend as the best path to take to try out perhaps a proof of concept on both platforms?
Carsten, maybe want to take opportunities to test out Exasol in the world?
Sure. So there are different possibilities to test out or test drive Exasol. One is we have a free version available. That is just a very small one. This is just to get maybe get a first look at the look and feel and the possibilities of Exasol. We call it a community edition that can be freely downloaded from our website. That gives you some first ideas of how that product works. We also have a database. If you already don't have data at hand, you want to test out, for example, Pyramid Analytics with existing data. We have a database on the internet for which you can freely register. It doesn't cost anything. You get free access to that. We have different data sets, also bigger data sets where we have those billions of records in there that you can then connect your instance of Pyramid Analytics, for example, to it and do everything with that. And then, of course, if you think about potentially actually running a test drive with your own data, because in my opinion, that's always the most important thing. I mean, we can talk a lot about the performance that we can provide. You saw in the demo that this was all instant, and you'll also see that when using our database, that it's basically instant. However, the most important thing is that you actually work with your own data to see and be able to identify the benefits you can actually get from using this combination of products in your daily work, in your daily business, and what that can bring to the table, be it in the part where you integrate your data, be it in the part where you analyze the data, what kind of performance you can get all of a sudden, what kind of possibilities open up with a combination of these two products, not just in terms of performance, but also ease of use, capabilities in terms of data science. For example, the k-means cluster that Ian just created on the fly when loading the data, all that is then a proof of concept, which of course we can then also set up in different areas. We can either use the cloud if you prefer to run it in a public cloud. As I said, we are available in all three big cloud vendors. You can go to the marketplace and search for Exasol there. But also, if you want to run it on premises, either use your own hardware, or we can also ship hardware to you if needed, if you want to set that up there.
And just on that point, you can see here actually, this is our standard demo server, and we already have a connection into the cloud demo environment that Carsten was talking about here, the demodb.exasol.com. So again, if you want to set that up, you can. In terms of Pyramid, again, you can download Community Edition from our website. That's probably the easiest and quickest way to get started. And once you've got that installed, again, you'll need to get a connection and a login from Exasol, but then you can set up a connection directly to their server if you don't want to download and install that yourself. Josh, anything else?
Thanks, guys. Actually, looks like that's it for the moment. Let's see. I'm gonna do a quick little screen share of my own real quick as we close things out. All right, so I just wanted to show you real quick over on pyramidanalytics.com. If you go to the Pyramid menu, platform and integration, you'll see on here Exasol listed there. You can click the Learn More button. And then from there, we have a little bit more detail. We have links to blog posts to this very webinar, which will soon be on demand, press release, and exasol.com. This blog post in particular is particularly interesting, I think. One of our guys, David Gordon, actually wrote a piece that kind of highlights some of the same stuff that Ian just showed in video format. So you can have a reference there. I think it would be pretty handy going forward. So yeah, I guess I'll just wrap things up. Thanks once again to both of you, Ian and Carsten. Just a reminder that we will send a replay of this event later this week, possibly even today. In the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. You can even just reply to the replay email that we send out, and we'll make sure it gets to the right person, or you can send a message directly to us through the contact us page on the website. We do hope that this has been a beneficial use of your time as you seek out solutions for data and analytics. Thanks for attending and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.